The steam whistle screams through the cold morning air. Hundreds of boots crunch on the frozen gravel outside the tall brick gates. Men in heavy coats pull their caps down low against the wind. They carry small tin boxes filled with bread and cold meat. The sun is not yet up, but the factory lamps are glowing bright orange. This is the start of a day that will not end for many hours. Today, most of us sit at desks or work from home. We wait for the clock to hit 5 or 6 in the evening. Have you ever wondered why we work exactly 8 hours? Why not 6 hours, or maybe 10? That loud whistle in the cold air created the life you live today. Millions of people follow this exact schedule every single day. We wake up, we work, and we go home after 8 hours. It feels natural, like the rising of the sun. But this system did not come from nature. It was built by hand, piece by piece, during a time of great fire and smoke. Before the big factories, time was a very different thing. A farmer did not look at a clock to see if it was 9 a.m. He looked at the sky to see if the rain was coming. He worked until the job was done, or until it was too dark to see. The idea of a workday with a fixed start and end did not exist for most of human history. The change began in small, crowded workshops in England. The smell of hot metal and coal smoke filled the narrow streets. Powerful machines began to do the work of 100 men. These machines were expensive, and they never got tired. The owners wanted the machines to run all the time. If the steam engine stopped, the money stopped. This created a new kind of pressure on the human body. Workers were no longer following the seasons or the sun. They were following the rhythm of the machine. In those early days, the workday was a monster. It was common for people to work 14 or 16 hours. They started in the dark, and they finished in the dark. A young boy stands by a spinning machine. His hands are covered in grease. He has been standing for 12 hours already. His legs ache, and his eyes are heavy. If he falls asleep, the machine might catch his sleeve. There are no breaks for play or school. This was the reality for thousands of families in the early 1800s. The system was new, and there were no rules to catch it. Life was simply work and sleep. People began to feel like parts of the machine themselves. They were tired, hungry, and they wanted their lives back. This struggle is where our modern 8-hour day truly begins. One man looked at this smoke and felt a deep sadness. His name was Robert Owen. He was a factory owner himself, but he was different. He stood in his mill and watched the exhausted faces of his workers. He saw that tired workers made many mistakes. He also saw that they were unhappy and sickly. Owen had a vision of a world that was balanced. He believed a human life should be divided into 3 equal parts. He began to say a simple phrase that people still remember today: 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. It was a beautiful, simple idea. But in 1817, this idea sounded like a dream. Other factory owners laughed at him. They thought it was impossible to run a business this way. They believed that if people worked less, the country would become poor. Owen did not give up easily. He wrote letters and held meetings to spread his message. He wanted people to see that a rested worker is a better worker. However, the system was moving in the opposite direction. More factories opened, and the whistles blew earlier and earlier. The fight for time was becoming a fight for the soul of the working class. Imagine a crowded wooden hall filled with men in dirty clothes. The air is thick with the smell of cheap tobacco and sweat. A speaker stands on a crate and shouts to the crowd. He talks about the 8-hour movement. The workers cheer so loudly the windows shake. They are tired of seeing their children grow up inside stone walls. They want time to read, to talk, and to walk in the park. This was not just about money anymore. It was about the right to have a life outside of labor. This movement began to grow like a slow fire across Europe and America. but the road was very long and very difficult. In the mid-1800s, many strikes broke out in large cities. A strike is when workers refuse to work until things change. In Chicago, the streets were filled with thousands of people. They marched together, carrying signs that demanded an 8-hour day. The police watched them from the corners with cold eyes. There was a lot of tension in the air. People were afraid that the machines would stop forever. The owners were afraid of losing their power and their profits. Then came a day in May 1886 that changed everything. It happened at a place called Haymarket Square in Chicago. The protest started peacefully under a gray sky. But suddenly, a small explosion cracked through the air. Chaos followed, and many people were hurt. This event shocked the world and made the news in every country. It showed that the workday was not just a small problem. It was a central conflict of the modern age. After the tragedy at Haymarket, the demand for 8 hours became a global symbol. Even though the protests were loud, the change was slow. Many companies still forced long hours on their employees. But then, a very famous businessman had an unusual idea. His name was Henry Ford. He was the man who made the Model T car. In 1914, Ford did something that shocked the entire business world. He doubled the pay of his workers and shortened the workday to 8 hours. People thought he was crazy. They expected his company to fail within a year. But Ford was a very practical man. He noticed that when men worked too long, they became clumsy. They dropped parts or forgot to tighten bolts. By giving them more rest, they worked faster and better. But Ford had another secret reason for this change. He realized that if people worked all the time, they had no time to buy things. They had no time to drive cars or go on trips. By giving workers more free time, he was creating more customers. This was a massive shift in how people thought about the economy. The workday was not just about producing goods. It was about creating a lifestyle. This system worked so well that other companies had to follow. If it didn't, all their best workers would go to Ford. Slowly, the 8-hour day became the standard in America. Then, in 1938, the government made a law. The Fair Labor Standards Act was signed, and the 40-hour work week was born. This law felt like a victory for millions of families. Finally, people had Saturday and Sunday to themselves. The weekend, as we know it today, is actually a very modern invention. But as the decades passed, the world began to change again. In the 1950s and 60s, people were very proud of the 8-hour day. They felt it was the perfect balance for a stable life. A father would leave at 8 a.m. and return at 5 p.m. The mother would have dinner ready, and the kids would be home from school. This rhythm created the suburbs and the modern middle class. It felt like the hidden system was finally working for everyone. But a new revolution was quietly waiting in the wings. This revolution did not involve steam or coal. It involved silicon and electricity. The computer began to enter the office. At first, people thought computers would make work even shorter. Some experts in the 1960s predicted we would only work 15 hours a week by now. They thought machines would do all the hard thinking for us. We would spend our days painting, traveling, and playing games. But as we know, that is not what happened. Instead of working less, the lines between work and life began to disappear. Think about a modern office at 6 p.m. The sun is setting behind the glass windows. Most of the desks are empty, but the blue lights of laptops are still glowing. A woman sits on a train, looking at her glowing phone screen. She is answering an email from her boss. She is off the clock, but she is still working. The 8-hour day was designed for factories where you had to be physically present. You couldn't take a steam engine home with you. But today, we carry our factories in our pockets. This has created a strange situation in our modern lives. We still follow the 9 to 5 schedule created 100 years ago, But the work we do is very different. In a factory, you can see how many shoes you made in an hour. In a modern office, it is harder to measure output. Does sitting at a desk for 8 hours mean you are being productive? Many studies suggest that humans can only focus deeply for about 3 or 4 hours. The rest of the time is often spent in meetings or checking websites. A young man sits in a bright office. He finished his main task 2 hours ago, but he cannot leave yet because it is only 3:30 p.m. He looks at the clock and sighs. He spent the next few hours looking busy, so his manager is happy. This is sometimes called presenteeism. It means being present at work, even when you're not working. This is the shadow of the old factory system. We are still using a 19th century clock to measure 21st century minds. It feels like a piece of clothing that no longer fits us properly. During the year 2020, the world went through a giant experiment. Millions of people suddenly had to work from home. The big office buildings became silent and empty. People started to realize something interesting. They could finish their work in 5 hours if no one interrupted them. They didn't have to spend 2 hours in traffic every day. They could wash their clothes or walk the dog between meetings. The hidden system of the 8-hour day was suddenly visible. Many people began to ask, do we really need to go back to the old way? Some countries are already trying something new. In places like Iceland and parts of Spain, they are testing a 4-day work week. They work 32 hours instead of 40, but they get the same pay. The results have been very surprising. People feel less stressed, and they are rarely sick. They spend more time with their children and their hobbies. Most importantly, the companies found that the work still gets done. The employees are more focused because they know their time is valuable. But changing a system that is 100 years old is not easy. Many leaders worry that if we work less, we will fall behind. They worry about the economy and competition. There is also a deep cultural belief that working hard means working long. We often judge people by how busy they look. If someone leaves the office early, we might think they are lazy. This is a very old idea that comes from the days of the steam whistle. It is hard to break a habit that has been part of our families for generations. The story of the 8-hour day is really a story about what we value. Is the goal of life to produce as much as possible? Or is the goal to have a life that is full and healthy? Robert Owen and the early strikers fought for the right to rest and recreation. They wanted humans to be more than just tools. Today, we are facing the same question, but in a new way. Technology has given us incredible power, but it has also made it harder to turn off the lights. A woman sits on her porch in the evening. She puts her phone face down on the table. She listens to the birds and watches the stars come out. For a moment, she is not a worker or a consumer. She is just a person enjoying her time. This was the dream of the people who marched in the streets a long time ago. They didn't just want a shorter day. They wanted a bigger life. They wanted the freedom to choose how to spend the most precious thing we have, our hours. History shows us that systems are not permanent. They are built by people, and they can be changed by people. The 8-hour day was a great invention for its time. It protected millions of people from being exhausted by machines. But as our world changes, our systems must change too. We are moving toward a future where work might look very different. Maybe one day, the 9 to 5 will look as strange to our grandchildren as a 16-hour factory shift looks to us today. The next time you hear a clock chime or see the time on your computer, think about the long journey to this moment. Think about the smoke, the whistles, and the tired children of the past. They gave us the weekend. They gave us the evening. They gave us the chance to ask what comes next. The system we live in today is just one chapter in a very long book. We're the ones who get to write the next page. Do you think the 8-hour workday is still the best system for us today? Or is it time for a new change? Perhaps you have noticed how your own focus changes throughout the day. Many people find they are most creative in the morning and very tired by the afternoon. If you could design your own perfect workday, what would it look like? Write your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear how you manage your time in this busy world. And if this history of work surprised you, the story of how the modern school system was created might be even more interesting.